Ahoy there, this is Olusegun Yekami of Nosa Capital, coming to you on a rather somber day, a somber evening in Canada anyway. But that's beside the point. Today I'm not going to be discussing about the S&P 500 or Bitcoin or anything like that, but I will be saying something about digital currencies. And in order to introduce this topic, I have to remind many of you that there was a very important World Economic event that took place at Davos in Switzerland every year. And I'm about to read a few things to you, and these things have come from someone else, actually, a guy called Dave McKay, who has written a nice article for the Royal Bank of Canada, a wealth management website. And being in Davos, what he's written is actually because he was in Davos, and he's written to more or less a good summary of what the things that he observed and the important points that were made. But before we get to what Dave McKay wrote, many people might think about Davos. You just hear the word Davos, but what it really is the World Economic Forum. And the World Economic Forum is an international organization for public-private cooperation. The forum engages the foremost political, business, cultural, and other leaders of society to shape global, regional, and industry agendas. It was established in 1971 as a non-profit foundation and is headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. It is independent, impartial, and not tied to any special interests. The forum strives in all its efforts to demonstrate entrepreneurship in the global public interest while upholding the highest standards of governance. Moral and intellectual integrity is at the heart of everything it does. And it also goes on to say that its activities are shaped by a unique institutional culture founded on the stakeholder theory, which asserts that an organization is accountable to all parts of society. The institution carefully blends and balances the best of many kinds of organizations from the public and private sectors, international organizations, and of course, academic institutions. And so not only do you get business leaders and political leaders, you also get some celebrities. Someone who's, I think, almost just about every year he always attends is Bono, the singer of lead singer of U2, the band U2, which is one of the biggest international bands at the moment. And then you've got Greta Thunberg, of course, the young Swedish lady who's an environmentalist. So you've got all sorts of people there. Many still believe it's an elitist organization. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I mean, depending on how you look at it, it certainly looks elitist, because to actually go there, you need to be invited. And if you're not invited and you're to be there, that means you're a member of the WEF Forum, which means that you are being charged about £480,000 a year to be a member. So tell me what's more elitist than that. I mean, I don't think that's cheap, but I leave you to make up your mind on that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now that we now know what the World Economic Forum is, let's look at the article very closely. The title of the article is Davos 2020, The Race for Global Scale. Now, as I said before, it's a little bit late for this, but I thought that the section on cryptocurrencies was quite important. I think we should just have a quick look at it again. And there are several sections discussed. You've got superpowers as the new super platforms, you've got government redirected, capitalism repurposed, accountability redefined, the new math of net zero, the messy math of energy, the return of Malthus, currencies 2.0, that's our section, organizations 3.0, and finally education 4.0. So let's go to the section that we're interested in, and that's this, which is the currencies 2.0. what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read what was said, and then I'll interject here and there and try and make it as short as possible and not bore you. So, the first Davos Forum inspired conversations around dismantling of the gold standard and the emergence of the United States dollar as the world's reserve currency. 50 years later, the forum is working with central banks and financial institutions to talk about currencies for the digital economy. A group of financial executives met with Bank of England Governor Mark Carney to discuss the next frontier in payments, knowing there is a complex problem to solve. How can we reduce the friction of digital payments without undermining the financial system that is a foundation block of our economy? And let me just interject very quickly here. That statement alone tells you that the powers that be now understand. It is now very, very clear to the powers that be that digital currencies, in other words, cryptocurrencies, are going nowhere. They are here to stay. And they might as well get used to it. And that's what they're saying, that how can we accommodate both the current financial system as well as the digital currencies? Let's continue. We've weathered financial crisis since the end of the gold standard because our financial system doesn't separate the storing, lending and movement of money into isolated channels. In fact, the confluence of these channels has ensured liquidity and an efficient matching of short-term savings, i.e. deposits, with long-term investments, i.e. loans. While digital currencies could make transactions easier, they risk diverting the lifeblood of our financial system to sources outside the system, like the big tech platforms that want the economic value of payments without the regulatory costs. Well, that statement alone tells you one simple thing. It's all about control. In other words, the powers that be, the central banks, the countries, the governments across the world want to ensure that they continue to, control the whole system. Now, we could argue about the kind of undue power like a big tech platform like Facebook could have if it had payments. But that's for a whole nother video, which I think is something that I think we should discuss sometime in the future. Let's continue with this article. Let's look at the next paragraph. The next generation of payments will present another critical question. Will digital currencies ever replace King Dollar? Answer: not anytime soon. Facebook's Libra project has struggled to gain acceptance, and China's initiative to build a digital yuan faces some fundamental problems. Beijing hasn't explained which currencies, if any, might backstop the concept, which would be essential if a digital yuan is to facilitate trade, such as an Alibaba purchase from Europe or Russia oil sales to China. The consequences are equally unclear if such a currency were to be adopted by rogue actors seeking to evade US financial sanctions. Let's pause there just very quickly. Or should I? No, let me go into the next statement and then I'll pause. So the next statement is, the Trump administration's active use of sanctions has already pushed many countries, notably Russia and Iran, to pursue new financial channels with Europe, the Middle East and Asia, making the notion of a new digital currency all the more appealing to them. Right, now let me jump in. A few years ago, when there was another beef between, I think it was to do with the nuclear energy issue between Iran and of course the United States. The Iranians sort of weathered that storm, and so the United States decided to attack countries doing business with Iran. Now in South Africa we were buying oil from the Iranians, and the Americans essentially threatened us by saying that if we continue to buy oil from Iran, they were going to take us off the SWIFT system. Now, I got to tell you, which is something that you don't really read about, but South Africa resisted for about 18 months before eventually we stopped. But I have to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, particularly those of you Americans, if you're listening to this, watching this, it left a very bitter taste in our mouths. Why? Because you're the ones with the beef with Iran, not us. They're not our enemy. They might be your enemy, but they're not our enemy. You've got a beef with them, sort it out with them. Leave us out of it. And this left many of us, like I said, with a very, very bad taste. And so it is only to be expected that countries will have to start looking for alternative systems. Hence, many of you may recall that both the Russians and the Chinese came up with their own payment systems. Now, not every country can do that, but cryptocurrencies will enable many countries to do that. I mean, for instance, if you went to Zimbabwe, the Zimbabweans started to use Bitcoin as their currency, particularly to move money around. So, I mean, it gave, the cryptos gave us a kind of flexibility that we'd never seen before. Anyway, let's move on. The biggest challenge for the next generation of currencies will be to earn the trust of consumers, producers, sellers, and lenders, and scale that trust. Through financial crises, wars, and recessions, the United States dollar has done just that, which is why the world continues to fluctuate. For all the frustrations they can cause, America's legal and regulatory systems remain the gold standard of global finance, which is why the dollar is backed up by the most valuable currency of all, trust. One cannot deny the importance of the United States dollar in terms of international trade. There's no question about that. There's absolutely no doubt, no question, no point in discussing that or going into it, because we all know the truth. Nevertheless, the digital currencies have given us a trust, i.e. through the trustless system, something to look forward to. I mean, I think, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to think this. I mean, I'm sure millions of people thought it before I did. I think the trustless system, the mathematics of this new trustless system is absolutely, excellent. It's possibly one of the best things that ever happened to mankind in recent years. Not to mention the fact that the only core problem I see is the volatility within the crypto space. If that volatility could be, now I couldn't tell you what percentage or what kind of percentage you could get to get people to really trust the crypto systems. I mean, mathematicians out there, if you can find the odds or the probabilities, whatever you need to calculate, please do let us know and give it to us, and then we can actually make another video about that. That would be very nice. Now, I don't have the math background to calculate those levels of probabilities, but I'm sure if volatility was kept in check or was extremely low, I'm sure people could pretty much trust, I believe, a basket of currencies, not just one, of course, of which will probably is most likely going to contain Bitcoin and something and a few others. So I think that we might have a basket of maybe 10 cryptocurrencies to do that. And if that happens, I believe that the cryptos can really take off in the realms of commerce. But like I always say about all these kind of matters that are subjective and speculative to some extent, I always conclude, for those of you who read my blog, you always hear me say, your guess is as good as mine. As to what will happen into the future, your guess is as good as mine. Interesting times ahead, ladies and gentlemen. Very interesting times ahead. Anyway, let me leave you for the rest of your evening. Please spend time with your families, take care of yourselves. May God bless you all, and have a good one. Bye.